Welcome everybody to, a 2025 version of the next season, fourth season going into it, of the Chase with Jace. I'm your host, Jace Lejeune, as always. And, of course, the Tigers are going to be on a chase for hopefully maybe SEC championship. I know a lot of people definitely want a college football playoff type of push this year. So hopefully the fourth time's a charm for head coach Brian Kelly. But we're going to go and talk about it. This is actually being recorded a day before the first media availability for the media to come and go and check out the LSU football team. So we'll have basically in-depth coverage of the LSU Tigers every single day. You can go to our website, which is gridironfootballusa.com. But today, might as well just kind of give a scope of the landscape around LSU's football team going into the 2025 season and what kind of team we should expect this year. And there's a lot of storylines. In fact, I'll actually post an article about this later today as we're recording this, but at the end of the day, I'll post an article about the top 5 things I'm looking forward to and watching the most heading to spring football. But you can check that out at gridironfootballusa.com. It's a little teaser there. But today, we're going to talk about position by position, how LSU is looking like going into spring football. And obviously, we have to start off, everybody wants to start off, whether you like it or not, the quarterback position. I mean, that's just, no matter if you're winning or losing, the blame or the praise, like it or not, is going to go to the quarterback position. And LSU's had a pretty good run at quarterbacks, and especially going into their second year. We saw this with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was pretty solid his first year as a starting quarterback at LSU, and you saw the jump he made from year 1, year 2, national championship, Heisman Trophy, greatest individual season in college football history. Jaden Daniels saw the same thing, was perhaps maybe even a little bit better than Joe Burrow was his first year, and you saw that jump he made from year 1 to year 2, Heisman Trophy, second overall draft pick, and you see what he's doing with the Washington Commanders. The greatest rookie season in NFL history. Guess what? It's Garrett Nussmeier's second season going into as the starting quarterback. Decided to come back. A lot of people thought that he would actually go to the draft last year, but decided to forego that, decided to come back for another year. And statistically, if you look at statistically for Garrett Nussmeier, he was actually better than Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels, actually way better statistically passing than they were in their first seasons. Am I going to say that he's going to make that huge jump like Burrow did, like Daniels did? Well, we're going to have to see about that. I don't think it's going to be that big of a jump, but I expect a pretty decent jump, and for him to be one of the best quarterbacks in college football. Look at the numbers last year. 4,052 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, and this is really with the lack of a running game. A lot of it had to do with Garrett Nussmeier's arm. So if they can get a little balance there to help Garrett Nussmeier a little bit, expect him to be even more productive and put up similar, maybe more efficient numbers than he did a year before. So no question, you get your offensive coordinator back in Joe Sloan, you get Garrett Nussmeier back, no question about it. He's your guy. So you knew that coming into last year. It was his shot. He took advantage of his shot. Question is, though, what is going to look like behind Garrett Nussmeier if something were to happen to Nussmeier? Well, LSU did bring a Mississippi State transfer in Michael Van Buren. He actually started last year for the Bulldogs. In 10 appearances, he completed 140 of 256 passes for a short hair of under 2,000 yards and 11 touchdowns. He actually also had 5 rushing touchdowns. He looked pretty good and actually played really well at times, especially against the best of the best in the SEC against Georgia. He had himself a great performance there. And that's not easy to do as a freshman going to the SEC. So Michael Van Buren comes in from Mississippi State to LSU. Potentially could be the next quarterback in line after Garrett Nussmeier. He goes through the season. So Michael Van Buren could be the next guy. Now, the plan is, though, whether it's Michael Van Buren, whether it's Colin Hurley, or Juwan Johnson, whoever's behind them, the plan is simple, is for all those guys to get a red shirt. So you got that college football rule now that you can't play more than 4 games and keep your red shirt. So you can play up to 4 games and keep your red shirt. So all those guys aren't, unless something disastrous happens with Garrett Nussmeier from an injury standpoint, you're not going to see more than 4 guys from all those guys. So the plan is to redshirt all those guys, and so coming next year, you get Michael Van Buren as potentially the guy. And you got Colin Hurley. He won't be available in the spring because he's still recovering from a car accident that happened in January. So with that move being said, one of the interesting things I'm looking forward to fall camp is seeing Juwan Johnson make that role, that change from playing running back, from playing defensive back last year to playing quarterback. How is that going to look like? That's going to be something to keep an eye out for. So Juwan Johnson covered his whole high school career, called a couple of his games at LCA, held all the Louisiana records for total yards, touchdowns, you name it. So he can throw the football. Like he is a really good. He was one of the greatest high school quarterbacks that ever played in Louisiana high school football. So he can get it done. It's going to be interesting to see how they work with him, what kind of packages they deal with him. But Garrett Nussmeier is your guy. I believe you have a little bit better depth at the quarterback position than probably you did the year before, especially solidifying that number 2 guy. And I think you do have that, which I think will open things up for Garrett Nussmeier, especially with his running ability, because you have a guy like Michael Van Buren behind him who's proven that he can play and start the SEC. So that's the quarterback position. Running back position, going through it pretty quickly, my thoughts going into spring. Caden Durham, it's good to get it back like that. He's the first freshman running back. I'm not making any comparisons. Don't make any comparisons when I'm on the show. But I'm just telling you the numbers. So this is the most rushing yards by a freshman running back since a guy named Leonard Fournette. That's what Caden Durham did last year. He had 1,013 all-purpose yards, second only behind Aaron Anderson last year. He's the first true freshman, like I said, to lead LSU in rushing since Leonard Fournette. And he was a freshman All-American last year. And he was pretty much that spark, right, for the LSU offense in its running game. There are a lot of question marks early in the season. Who was going to help out the running game for LSU? Well, he thought it was going to be Caleb Jackson. He thought it was going to be Josh Williams really carrying the running game. But it's really Caden Durham. It was a freshman that stepped up, and he became the guy. He became the guy that run the football last year. 753 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns on the ground. Also did a little bit of receiving too, 260 yards receiving, and 2 more touchdown catches as well. Now this year, the running back rotation is going to look a little different, right? Josh Williams, he's been there since like the beginning of time, probably the Moses days. He's been there, but you don't have him anymore. You don't have John Emery anymore. He's exhausted his eligibility. So, who do you have behind Caden Durham? Now, Caleb Jackson is the guy to watch out for. What will the spring look like for Caleb Jackson? There's been a lot of rumors about him that he might enter the transfer portal after the spring, when the spring window opens up back again. We're not sure about that. We'll see. We'll see how the spring goes, but there are some rumors there. So let's say in this situation you do lose him. What you're going to do? Well, you did pick up 2 of the top running backs in the country from this freshman class. Harum Berry, 5-star running back, and he's the number 1 running back in the country according to all the outlets out there. You go and look at, he's the number 1 running back in the country. And you also bring in J.T. Lindsey, who for the Alexandria Trojans, he did a great job this past year. Got a lot of recruiting buzz heading into his senior season, and he had himself a really good senior season, led the Trojans all the way to the state championship. So he can be like an every down type of back too, so the potential is there too. So really 2 talented running backs. I mean, J.T. Lindsey's a 4-star running back. Harum Berry, 5-star. So you got talent in there. Now, that could be a really good both those 2 guys can really complement each other really well. You know, we talk about Harum Berry and we talk about a guy like J.T. Lindsey. Lindsey can be a guy that you can get the ball to in between the tackles. Well, you got Harum Berry. He's a guy that, you know, he kind of reminds me a lot of like a Reggie Bush. You know, you get him the ball in open space. You get him on tosses and sweeps, jet sweeps, screens. Get the ball in open space and let him do stuff after the catch. That is the type of player that he can be. I don't think he's going to be every 20, 30 carry type of guy, but he'll be your gadget guy. He can do a lot of stuff, get him the ball in open speed because he is fast and 4.3 40 speed, so he can go. So just get him in the open field, try to design stuff for him to get use his ability in the open field. That'll be big. So the running back room, going to be interesting. I would not sleep on Reed Chauvin either. I know he's a walk-on, but I've covered his whole high school career at Episcopal. He reminds me a lot of Josh Williams. He really does. That lower center of gravity. It's tough to. I mean, this is a guy that can bench press. Actually squat. He can squat over like 600 pounds. And I'm not exaggerating or anything. He was like a state champ, multi-time state champ in powerlifting. So it's hard to bring him down. And he's going to impress a lot of people in the weight room. So he's a type of guy that can kind of do a lot of different things and be a reliable guy. And I can see him maybe being like a Josh Williams type of player. So LSU might have a little bit of depth right now at the running back position, probably more than before, probably not where exactly they want to be, but you got a couple of different options there behind Caden Durham. Caden Durham is your guy. He's your number one guy, but you can't run him to the ground. So you need guys that can come in and complement him. You got talented guys like Barry and Lindsey, and if Caleb Jackson, if he gets it right in the spring as well. Obviously, Trey Holly, that situation's still going on. You would want Trey Holly back too. But for now, those are the guys you have. So whoever you can get, that's what's going to help you in your backfield. So that's the running back position. Wide receiver, you always know about the talent in the wide receiver room. Year in, year out, every single year. LSU is known for being NFL LSU. Right, especially wide receiver U. They're known for being wide receiver U as well. And no matter if you go back 20 years ago, they had it when they couldn't throw the football. When Les Miles was the coach there, they had Odell Beckham. They had Jarvis Landry. You had guys that were big playmakers, Dwayne Bowe, guys like that can make a lot of plays at the wide receiver position. And especially with the productivity has increased for the quarterback position, the passing game has increased for this LSU program. Wide receivers aren't slowing down. Malik Neighbors. You had Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas with Jaden Daniels. You had Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase with Joe Burrow. Terrace Marshall was a third receiver. He's in the NFL. So they're not going to lack for receiving options. They don't. And it's going to be a new look room, but there are some familiar faces and names. Aaron Anderson had a great season last year. Maybe a year or two, I guess a year later than people thought, that he thought it was going to be an instant impact guy when he came in from the transfer portal from Alabama 2 years ago. But Brian Kelly said he was just picking up on a lot of different things. It was really growing his first year, and he put it really all together last year. And you saw what kind of productivity he really has. 53 receptions, 784 yards, 5 touchdowns during the regular season. And, he also had a kickoff return for a touchdown against Oklahoma. He's a playmaker. So, and it was fun to see him really step up last year. And he has a chance maybe to be the wide receiver one for his LSU team this year. But you got Chris Hilton. That was the aspect that they lost last year in the passing game. And Garrett Nussmeier, I've seen Garrett Nussmeier and Chris Hilton connect so many times during fall camp. When Jaden Daniels was connecting with Malik Neighbors the offseason going to his big-time year, well, he was having the same time of connection with Chris Hilton. And it was really refreshing to see that at the end of the year against Oklahoma when he had 2 touchdown catches, and then obviously the big performance in the bowl game too. The biggest thing is, and it has been throughout Chris Hilton's career, is to stay healthy. If he can stay healthy, he has a chance to be a big-time wide receiver. His speed, there's not a lot of DBs that can keep up with him. Just talk about straight-line speed. And he can be that deep guy. He's a great deep ball player. We know Garrett Nussmeier is a great deep ball thrower. So if those two can connect and get that, really stretch out the passing game, the vertical passing game for this LSU team, that's going to make this LSU passing offense really dangerous. So he can not only do that, but you bring in some speed. I mean, Aaron Anderson's already been on the roster. And also you bring in Barian Brown from Kentucky. He's another guy like Aaron Anderson. He's one of the most productive special teams players of all time in the SEC in terms of punt returns, kickoff returns, you name it. And Barian Brown, 120 career catches, 1,500 receiving yards. He holds the record for most kickoff return touchdowns in SEC history. So adding him to the roster, he's already making big plays from what I've heard already in spring football before the media availability even starts. So get Barian Brown in there. You get Xavier Thomas in there. He was one of the bright spots last year as far as being a consistent piece in the kickoff return game. So he finally broke one. We knew he was going to break one. He had some really nice returns. He finally got in the end zone against Baylor in the bowl game. But you got three guys that can kick return, punt return. So that's going to be a very interesting battle during spring and fall because we got guys like Aaron Anderson, Xavier Thomas, and Barian Brown that can all do it. So that's going to be intriguing to watch. Nick Anderson is a big wide receiver, another deep ball guy. And you saw what he did his freshman year at Oklahoma. He was all Big 12, but he got hurt last year. It was a little bit of a down year from last year. So he gets back to his freshman form. He's going to be pretty tough to get him out of the lineup. Then you got Kyle Parker. He was actually getting a lot of reps, and he caught a deep touchdown against UCLA early in the season, but he got hurt, was out for the season. So you got other transfers coming in. Destin Hill from Florida State, and then you have your freshmen, right? Teron Francis is there from Manchild, from Mendakar. Colin Billiot, he's going to his second year. Jelani Watkins also going to his second year. Jelani Watkins is a track star. So, the wide receivers, there's always plenty of talent at the wide receiver position, and there still is in Baton Rouge, even though there might be some more names there that'll make a difference. Tight end, you can really include him in the wide receivers too, but Trey Green, he's just your big, glorified tight end, kind of like wide receiver hybrid made famous, like Jimmy Graham kind of made those guys famous, those basketball type of players that are finesse receivers. You can put them in a slot or on the outside, and he'll win a lot of one-on-one matchups because how many 6'7" cornerbacks can you find out there? Question is, you're not going to find any. So there's not going to be a lot of people that can match up with Trey Green one-on-one, and he is going to be very intriguing. I know you lose the most productive tight end of all time in LSU history in Mason Taylor, but the good news is you got a superstar coming up as far as kind of replacing that production right at the receiving position. Trey Green can do it. Now, you're not going to have the solidified blocker like you did with Mason Taylor. Mason can do it a little bit of both. But you bring in guys like Bauer Sharp. He was a former Southeastern quarterback for the Lions, and he actually transferred to Oklahoma, played tight end for the Sooners last year. Had a pretty good season. You bring in Donovan Green from Texas A&M. He is a big-time addition as well. He's a really talented tight end. He just got to stay healthy. That's just really the biggest thing about Donovan Green. But if he stays healthy, he will have a big role as well. So you got some options there at tight end. Obviously, the big name is Trey Green. You saw him playing a little basketball this year for LSU, a two-sport guy. He's going to be really fun. I'm really excited to see what he can do. I've covered him. His prep career is going to be really exciting to see what Trey Green can do. And he could be in for a big-time year. In terms of a breakout star, Trey Green can be that type of guy. Now, the question is, got a lot of skill player options, right? Whether it's at the running back position, receivers, tight ends, you name it, you got those. Biggest question going to the offseason is the offensive line. How is the offensive line going to look? Ever since Brian Kelly's been here, you've been pretty much used to the same five, or at least four of the five, right? At tackle, you knew going in, you had Will Campbell, Emory Jones for 3 years. You knew you had him for 3 years ever since they started their freshman year. At guard, and that gets overlooked. I know we talk about the tackles a lot, and Emory Jones and Will Campbell. Will Campbell's going to be a top 10 pick. Emory Jones going to be at least a day 2 pick. But you also lose your two guards, and Miles Frazier and Garrett Dellinger too. So they were part of that rotation the last 3 years. So that's going to be tough to replace. Your only start that comes back from last year is DJ Chester, who was a center. And, he's not really a natural center. He's really a natural guard. But you could tell he struggled a little bit at the center role last year. So what do? You bring in Braylon Moore. He is a 2-year starter for Virginia Tech at center. So you bring Braylon Moore in at center. You can push in a guy like DJ Chester to guard. You get Josh Thompson, who is a 4-year starter for Northwestern. He comes in. Now, he's not going to be he won't join the team, the LSU team, until about halfway in spring football. So I know Northwestern, they have basically not a semester system. They have more of a quarter system. So he's going to graduate. He wants to graduate, get his degree, and finish his classes out in Northwestern. Then he is going to join the team, I believe, in about a week or two. He's going to join the team at LSU. So that'll give you the opportunity to work in more guards, right? You can work in a Bo Bordelon. You can work in a Paul Mubenga or Cohen Eccles. Solomon Thomas is a five-star recruit that they were able to sign. And work in a couple of guys there. Now, you have a little bit more depth inside. Question is, who are going to be your tackles? That's a big question mark going into the season. And Tyree Adams figures to be that next guy. He was like the third guy in rotation behind Will Campbell, behind Emory Jones. He played a little bit whenever they weren't available, or Emory Jones had to sit out, or Will Campbell, which was hardly ever. But if he had to sit out for a play or two, he would come in. So Tyree Adams has a little bit of experience. You pretty much expect him to be the left tackle. Right tackle, right now, it looks like Weston Davis. He was a highly recruited guy from last year's recruiting class. Looks like at Weston Davis could be that guy. But yeah, there's still a lot of question marks right now about the offensive line, and we'll see how that goes. And when that 15 practice snippet we look at in the spring probably could tell us a whole lot about what the offensive line looks like. But that will definitely be a question mark going into it. Defensively, we'll talk more about that. We're going to take a commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk about the LSU defense and what to expect from that side of the football. It was notoriously bad 2 years ago. Now, did they get better? Yes, they got better. But how much better can they get in 2025? We'll come back and we'll talk more about it at the Chase with Jace.
Am I the only one that didn't know Tamara Cleans supports gridiron football? At Tamara Cleans, we don't just clean, we care. Proudly serving Baton Rouge, our team delivers top-notch personalized service with a smile. Both home and office, we have you covered. From routine tidying to deep cleans, we make your space shine. Plus, we're huge gridiron football fans just like you. Mention you saw this ad on Gridiron Football and a get special offer, so why wait? Call us at 225-287-4761 now. Tamara Cleans, your trusted local cleaning partner.
Welcome back. This is the Jace with Jace. Basically, spring football preview. Talk about the LSU Tigers going to the 2025 season. We'll have a show each and every Wednesday during spring football. And then as we get closer to the fall, we'll have one as well every Wednesday. So make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure to go to our website, gridironfootballusa.com. So let's get back and talk about the LSU football team. We talked about the offense going to spring, just kind of our early thoughts on what we should expect from the offense. Now we're going to talk about the defense. And the defense last year, Blake Baker, they did get better. There weren't the big blown coverage pass plays we saw a whole lot the year before. So they did improve, again, more discipline with their pass defense. I thought they did a really good job of improving their pass rush. You saw really had great seasons from your edge rushers and Brandon Swinson and Savion Jones. That was a bright spot for that LSU defense. The biggest problem, obviously, for the defense last year was anytime LSU had to face off against a dual threat quarterback, especially one that can run the football, that was a big problem for LSU down the stretch. And we'll see how much does that improve, getting more speed, just from sideline speed should help. And I think that right now LSU is getting back to bringing in guys that, like I say, they look like they're supposed to be on LSU's defense, right? They're getting back to that mold, and they're getting that for whether it's the transfer portal, whether it's from the freshman signing class coming up. We're going to talk about that a little bit about that too. Those guys that you're getting in, and I think LSU is starting to come back to where we want them to be. I don't think it's going to be. I don't expect this year to see this LSU defense being the 2011 LSU defense that was so dominant. But if this defense can improve, continue to get improved, maybe be top 40, in the country, or top 50 in the country, then that would certainly help, and that would be just what they need in order for LSU to be maybe a playoff team. So we're going to talk about the defensive line, and I'm going to write more about this on our website, groundfootballusa.com. But Kyle Williams has been announced as LSU's defensive line coach. If you know anything about Kyle Williams, he was an LSU legend, All-American LSU, two-time All-SEC performer. He gets drafted by the Buffalo Bills and has himself a phenomenal career in the NFL. 13 years, six-time Pro Bowler, one of the Buffalo Bills greats that played for the Buffalo Bills. Bo Davis was the defensive line coach. You felt so great about that last year. It's like, finally, LSU's got somebody they can count on as their defensive line coach. Because as you can tell, over the years, it's been a carousel under Brian Kelly to get that defensive line coach, and you thought you finally got one in Bo Davis, one of the best around in the entire country. Problem is, you lose Bo Davis right down the road in the NFL to New Orleans Saints. So you have to find back to square one. You have to find yourself a defensive line coach once again. Who is it going to be? Who's going to step up in that role? And stepping up in that role is Kyle Williams. And that, I think, is a great hire by Brian Kelly, because Kyle Williams is a young guy. Now, he's actually coached some of these rushing guys, like Ahmad Bro, who played a whole lot last year for the LSU defense, was a freshman and started a lot last year, was one of the bright spots for the defensive front. He coached Ahmad at Ruston. So he comes in, he develops a lot of these guys. He was a pro at being a defensive lineman. He bleeds purple and gold. He was at LSU. You're not going to lose him to another team, the college football team or anything like that. This is a guy that bleeds purple and gold. He knows the position. He knows what he's talking about. He knows how to develop. The question is recruiting. That's going to be probably the biggest question about him. How can he do recruiting? But he's a guy that just played in the NFL and just retired. So he's a young guy that can relate to a lot of these players. And he's an NFL great. So there's a lot of defensive linemen that would want to play for him and get to learn some nuggets from him. So I think that's a great hire for LSU. Now, talk about the defensive line. They did get some transfers, and they got Patrick Payton. Patrick Payton was probably the jewel, the gem of this transfer portal class. It was a big get for LSU to get him from Florida State. A lot of people are saying that he's like the number one player, especially defensive player from the transfer portal. And I know Florida State, bad year and all last year, but he was probably their best player on that team last year. So you get him into the program, get him on the edge. Remember, you're losing both your defensive ends. You're losing both Brandon Swinson. You're losing Savion Jones. You need someone that can come in there and can make an impact right away. And that is going to be a guy that can do that. On the other side, you bring in two more guys, right? You bring Jamari Butler. He's a graduate transfer from Nebraska. You bring Jack Pyburn, who LSU played against again at Florida. It's kind of crazy, but this is the transfer portal days now, that you get a Florida starter to transfer to LSU. But that, as weird as it sounds, that's what college football is now. So you get a guy like that to transfer over to a rival, to LSU. So you get Jack Pyburn. Gabriel Relaford played a whole lot. Remember, he was a standout in the spring game, and he did a great job of playing a whole lot of football and really flash. I'm really high on Gabriel Relaford. Remember, he was a standout at Evangel Christian Academy and was a big-time playmaker for them defensively, and you saw that in the spring game. And you saw it over the course of the season, so I think Gabriel Relaford will definitely be in the rotation on the edges. You also look at on the inside. Now, these are the guys that Kyle Williams will be working with. Like I said, he's already got rapport with Ahmad Bro. So Ahmad Bro is expected to be one of your guys on the inside. Dominic McKinley, like Ahmad Bro, a guy you expected to play a whole lot as a freshman. He did, and had some really good, nice flashes, especially at the end of the season. I believe he had 2 sacks against Oklahoma. So he really looked like the freshman 5-star that everybody thought he was going to be. So he just got to continue to improve. He's about 6'6", so it's kind of hard for a big 6'6" defensive lineman to kind of get underneath the pads, right? So just working on the leverage, working on getting underneath an offensive lineman. That's what he's going to work on during spring. And I know that Kyle Williams is a guy who wasn't overly that tall. He can definitely give him a lot of advice on how to get underneath offensive linemen and work leverage and work pad level, right? So that was big. Jacobian Guillory, I know it seemed like he's been here for 20 years, but he's back. Remember, he tours. He was out for the season last year, and you get him back as a graduate, and he's actually worked with a different defensive line coach every single year. So this is a guy that knows it, he gets it, and you really have like another defensive line coach in the room, because Jacobian Guillory's been really there for a long time. So he's a veteran that a lot of the young guys, like the up-and-comers like a Dominic McKinley, like a Ahmad Bro, can look up to and continue to develop. Sean Washington comes back. Remember, he was a Georgia transfer from last year, so that's another guy you can kind of look on the inside. So just continuing to build on that depth on the defensive line is going to be crucial for LSU, especially hopefully we get to eventually see what this LSU defense was. Remember, they were so great like in the mid-2010s with Les Miles. That's because they had like 12, 14 different defensive linemen. They were so deep on the defensive line. And just building that back up is going to make LSU as fierce as it once was on the defense as a whole, when they were just so good on that side of the football. At linebacker, really a lot of expectations. You go and talk about Harold Perkins. I mean, that's the first person everybody's going to talk about at the linebacker position. Now, how healthy he's going to be, what role he's going to be. Is it going to be inside? Is he going to play star? Is he going to play off the edge? Well, knowing a guy like Coach Baker, that has been so successful with the linebackers, Damone Clark. Remember Damone Clark, the year before, a lot of LSU fans were giving him a lot of tough times, right? And then that next year, Damone Clark was really the best player on that team. That was that 2020 COVID year. But remember, I don't want to go back to LSU. LSU fans don't want to remind them about that. But Damone Clark was probably arguably your best player on that team. And he's just a great developmental talent of the linebacker players, like a guy like Harold Perkins, like a Whit Weeks. Whit Weeks was, you could say, LSU's best defensive player last year. I mean, he came along, made a lot of big-time plays. The tip pass and interception, he caught off his own tip against Arkansas. He was all over the field that game. He was LSU's best defensive player last year. And if he continues to play more freely and just more confident, he brings a lot of swagger, right? He brings a lot of swagger to the LSU team. Probably we haven't seen since like it's like a Tyrann Mathieu, bring that type of swagger to LSU's defense. So that's exactly who you need. Devon Keys had a pick six against Baylor, and this is a guy that's played a lot, especially late in the season when Harold Perkins was out for the year, and he needed somebody to come and step up. And it was a guy like him, Devon Keys, that was going to have to step up because they didn't really have much else behind Perkins and Weeks, and he did step up and made a lot of plays down the stretch. So you have a guy, a lot of confidence in him. Tylen Singleton is a very talented player from Manny High School. He'll probably get in the rotation a lot. You also got Witt's other brothers. So you got Wes and you got Zach. Zach is a freshman coming in. So the linebacker position is getting a little deeper there. And as long as Harold Perkins and Whit Weeks, you probably won't see much of them, if at all, in the spring because they're both dealing with injuries. Whit happened at the very end of the season against Baylor. Harold happened early in the season, I believe against UCLA is when he got hurt. So you need time for them to recover for sure. So you won't be seeing much of them, but this is a great opportunity for those backup guys to get a lot of roles. So a lot of extra looks on Devon Keys, see how he develops. A lot of extra looks on Wes Weeks and the rest of the gang as well. The secondary, well, I think this is a position group that's definitely, I feel like, has improved in terms of talent since Brian Kelly's gotten here to now. They were just light years away just from being able to improve in that and just getting more talent there, right? But you look at one cornerback spot, Ashton Stamps. Ashton Stamps was probably your cornerback one last year a lot of times, going up against a lot of wide receiver ones. I thought he held his own. I thought Ashton Stamps was pretty solid, for the most part. And I think he's a guy that's going to continue to improve. You also look, DJ Pickett is the next big time guy. Everybody is what you expect. You see this guy walking up in the room, and you're thinking, okay, he looks like he should be an LSU DBU. All right, this is like long, rangy. 6'4". You don't see many 6'4" cornerbacks out there that can move and are fluid like he is. So that was huge. This is a guy that we're going to be keeping an eye on a lot, whether it's through the spring, whether it's through the fall. A guy that can step up and be an immediate impact guy. DJ Pickett. These are the type of guys that Corey Raymond was bringing in, year out, whether it's Derek Stingley or Tyrann Mathieu or Patrick Pearce, like those guys. This is a DJ Pickett could be like the next big name. So this is a guy that could impact early on. LSU also got P.J. Woodland. He played a whole lot last year too as a freshman. So a lot can be expected from him. And LSU got a couple more transfers as well. Mansour Delon, he came in from Virginia Tech, and this is a guy that has played a whole lot, was very successful at Virginia Tech. He could be the opposite cornerback on the opposite side of Ashton Stamps. And you bring in a nickel like Tamarcus Cooley, comes in from NC State. This is another guy that can play the nickel spot. Javian Toviano has played multiple positions in the secondary. So it seems like they're starting to get together to get a lot of that talent, right, that we expect to see from DBU. So they're only going to continue to improve there, and I'm really intrigued to see what guys will be the starting cornerbacks. And I'm sure that will kind of change in and out. I remember in fall practice last year, Corey Raymond, he just got there, right? So it was a different rotation, different group every single time because he got there. He just got there. He wants to see what he has in all his guys. So just pay attention to that. Jakeem Jackson is another guy from Florida, like Jack Pyburn. Comes in, played a whole lot in the SEC, comes in, goes to LSU. So we'll see how he fits. I know Jakeem has a lot of injury issues, so talent's always there. Jakeem was going to be a starter at Florida this year, but he got hurt and just kind of hurt his season as well. But Yeah, these are all guys that could definitely play. The safeties, that was a concern last year, and you saw how LSU struggled a lot at times at the safety position. Jordan Gilbert, he comes back from Texas A&M, and he's going to come back for another season. We'll see how he does there. Deshaun Spears is a guy I'm really high on. Covered him at Denham Springs High School. And I was really high on him. He made a lot of plays, especially in coverage. So this is a guy that could really step up and make a lot of plays. So he's long, rangy. I think he can help you in the running game too. So this is the type of guy that I expect to do a whole lot of. Now, finally, special teams. You still have, believe it or not, I believe Damian Ramos is back again. So, I mean, Damian Ramos has been there, 20 years? It seems like he's been there forever. But you get him back, and he's handled the place-kicking role for the last 3 years for LSU. So you get him back. It seems like he's been there for 10 years or so. But you get him back as your kicker. And as the punter, well, LSU got a transfer in Grant Chadwick from Middle Tennessee. So you get him, and he's actually been one of the top punters at the FBS level last year. So you get him in as well. And that's going to be a big pickup for LSU, especially because you missed your guy last year, Jay Bramlett, 2 years ago, who was your punter. You were trying to figure out a situation there with your punter game last year. You bring in, Peyton Todd was punting here and there, and another guy punting, and it was just chaotic there. Long snapper, that's going to be up for a new role, right? Excuse me. Silas Hall is a guy from Episcopal, 5-star long snapper. You might see him long snap this year, and one of the top long snappers in the country. So you could see him long snap. Jonathan Ferguson is a long snapper as well. And we've seen a lot of runs of Ferguson's as a long snapper, so that could be an option too. Aaron Burrell as your kickoff specialist. This kid, he can boot the football. You can expect him to be kind of like your kickoff specialist for LSU. Yeah, and then finally punt returner and kickoff returner, right? Well, you have Xavion Thomas. You saw what he can do last year. He returned one to the house against Baylor. Aaron Anderson, he did against Oklahoma, kickoff return for a touchdown. You bring in Barron Brown, the records he was able to set at Kentucky. So keep an eye on that, because that's going to be a really intriguing position battle, because all of those guys can make a play. They can give it to the house any single play. So keep an eye on that battle and see how that transpires during spring and for fall. Well, that's just an early look at the LSU football team going to 2025 spring football. We'll have a live coverage. Like I said before, the media is open to go and attend LSU practices starting tomorrow. So you'll see a live post on our social media. So make sure to follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. We'll post all the highlights there too. You get LSU spring practice report every single day when we're out there. So just go to gridironfootballusa.com. We'll have the Chase with Jace every single week during the spring. And then we'll follow it up closer to the end of the summer when we go to fall camp as well. So make sure to go to gridironfootballusa.com, and we'll see you next time on another episode of the Chase with Jace.